Welcome to the Paraprofessional Training Series. For each webinar, you can access handouts by clicking on the link in the webinar handouts box. Before you begin, please pause now to download or print the handouts that will be used for this part of the series. This is part 5 of the Paraprofessional Training Series, Behavior Supports in the Classroom. This is a multi-part series offered for paraprofessionals. Verification of orientation training necessary for each paraprofessional to perform duty as assigned is present. The federal regulations, the Missouri State Plan, and the Missouri Office of Special Education Compliance Standards and Indicators indicate that each paraprofessional, even though those who hold a teaching certificate, is required to have received 15 clock hours of training within 6 months of hire, including orientation and initial training prior to working with the student. A minimum of 10 clock hours each school year thereafter is also required. This webinar will provide information about developing a basic understanding of the function of behavior, identifying the ABCs of behavior, and recognizing vulnerable decision points. Please take a moment to make sure you have the handouts listed on the screen available for your use throughout the webinar. During the course of this training, you will be directed to pause the webinar to review and reflect on the content or activities using these handouts. Upon completion of each activity, click play and continue. Take a moment to read this slide. As you complete part 5 of this webinar series, keep the focus on this statement. The next slides will address the function of behavior. Behavior is a form of communication. Many times children do not know any other way to tell you what they need. Behavior serves a purpose. If you look for patterns in behaviors, you will see that the behavior occurs for a reason. Behavior is learned. Sometimes children learn that problem behavior is the most effective way to communicate to get their needs met. Behavior errors can be corrected like academic errors. When we have an idea about why behavior is occurring, we can teach replacement behaviors to help students get their needs met in socially appropriate ways. Behavior is functionally related to the classroom environment. There are two major functions of behavior: to get or obtain something, or to escape or avoid something. A child may use particular behaviors as a way of getting attention from peers or adults, obtaining a certain tangible item or a preferred activity, or to access some type of sensory stimulation. Alternatively, a child may also use particular behaviors as a way to avoid or escape interactions with peers or adults, a particular task or activity, or a sensory conditions they find undesirable or aversive. Important points to remember. Do not take the student's behavior personally. Behavior is a form of communication. Behavior is learned. The function of behavior is to avoid something or to obtain something. The ABCs of behavior are: A equals antecedent, B equals behavior, and C equals consequence. They are defined as antecedent, events that happen immediately before and trigger a behavior; behavior, any observable and measurable act of an individual; consequence, the resulting event or outcome that occurs immediately following the behavior, may increase, maintain, or decrease the likelihood of a future behavior. For example, when you are hungry or thirsty and see a vending machine, the vending machine is the antecedent. When you put your money in the slot and select the number of items you want, this would be the behavior. When the machine drops your choice into the tray for you to enjoy, this would be the consequence. The function of the behavior is to get or obtain an item, the snack you wanted. This behavior is learned by watching others and from your own previous experience with vending machines. Your learning history tells you that if you put money in the vending machine, you will be likely to get a little treat. However, there are occasions when antecedent and behaviors occur. You see the machine, you put the money in, you push the right button, but your treat doesn't come out. Depending on how this happens and how much it costs or inconveniences you, you might change your behavior. You may stop choosing that particular item, stop using that machine, or even stop using vending machines at all and bring a snack or drink from home. You have learned you can't reliably get snacks from that machine. This is the same process at work when children use a certain type of behavior in the classroom or in the school environment. When they determine that they can rely on a constant outcome based on their behavior, they will use that behavior whenever that outcome is desired. What does the function of the behavior look like in the classroom? The next few slides gives examples of looking at the ABCs of behavior in a math class. Think about when the behavior is occurring. This is the context or the environment. For this example, it is in a math class. When looking at a behavior, it needs to be defined in observable and measurable terms so that everyone involved can be consistent. Take a moment to look at the examples and the non-examples on this slide. The behavior is described in observable and measurable terms. Think about the behavior that it is defined. The antecedent is what happens right before the behavior. Sometimes you have to think about this in reverse. Think about the consequence. The consequence is what happens right after the behavior. This is an example of a completed ABC chart using the classroom information from the previous slides. Pause the webinar. Using handout number 1, think about the possible behavior and complete one of the ABC frames. Important points to remember. Be aware of the antecedents that affect the student. Carry out behavior plans as directed by the teacher, and collect data as directed by the teacher. Behavior is a large topic. When working with students who have been identified with emotional and/or behavioral concerns, it is important to consider vulnerable decision points for the student and the adult. Vulnerable decision point. The point when an adult realizes they may be vulnerable to a biased response. Are you aware when your vulnerable decision points could occur? Pause the webinar. Using handout number 2, think about vulnerable decision points for yourself and the students with whom you work on a daily basis. After reflection on your vulnerable decision points, try to remember to communicate expectations consistently and regularly, set clear and realistic guidelines, and have high expectations for behavior. The best way to support all students for success is to respond, listen, and think. Thinking about all the information that was presented in this webinar, reflect on your learning. Missouri has been split into 9 regions. Each region has a Regional Professional Development Center, an RPDC. The diverse staff of the RPDC provides a variety of professional development opportunities and services for K-12 schools, both on and off campus. Each of these centers have staff trained in paraprofessional professional development. Please contact your teacher, leader, and your supervisor for access to the resources available through these centers. This concludes Part 5 of the Paraprofessional Training Series.